Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And just a couple things right off the bat. I think the internet's going to be okay. I moved to a cabin. It's been an issue, and I've been investing in these different. I have this new unit that it's supposed to work just fine. Next week we're going to be in the Berkshires. I'm going to do a show right on the location, the Tom Warner's farm. And there's going to be some new witnesses. So that's going to be live next week on location. It's going to start an hour early. So it's going to be a 3-hour show. You can't miss that. It's going to be a great one. Some new witnesses are going to be speaking for the very first time. And so it should be an excellent show next week. So after that, I think, I have a boat moored out on the ocean right in the harbor, not too far away. And I was on that with my phone the other day. It gets 5 gigs there, and the hotspot goes really well. So I think I'm going to do, I know it sounds crazy, but I think I'm going to do my show from my boat from if the weather's good, if it's not, the tiny ship can't be tossed. So I'm going to see if that's going to work out. But it's been an issue, and hopefully things will be smooth throughout the show. So my guests tonight, first, I was thinking about the UAP report that came out, and I've got a lot of email about that. A lot of people contacting me in different ways, Facebook and everywhere else about that and what I thought about it. And so I was thinking only this afternoon, who would be better to talk about that than Kevin Randle? So he's coming on in just a few minutes. He's someone I always look to for a great opinion in the straight stuff on this UFO topic. So he'll be on in just a minute. After that is Zen Benfidel. He has had an encounter at a very young age. He contacted me all the way back in 2013. He's always been really nice to me. So I am bringing him on this show for the first time. I think you're really going to enjoy the things that he is going to talk about. But for right now, I'm going to bring Kevin in. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thanks for your last minute appearance that you could actually do this. I really appreciate that.
It's lucky that I was on the computer. Sometimes I don't see my email for a couple of days.
Yeah. I tried calling you first, but now I'm just so glad that you really can just do this last minute. And I do remember the last time I had you on the show, someone canceled, and it was another last minute thing. And I said, Kevin, my guest canceled. Can you come on tonight? And you did the whole show right then. So I appreciate that. And I mentioned just a few weeks ago, I can't remember, it was a guest from Canada that was on the show, and your name came up. We were both talking about if someone wants to get the straight scoop about a UFO encounter, you can always count on your blog site. And so right off the bat, there's so many new people interested in this topic right now. Can you just throw out your website so people can find it? And I'll put it in the show notes as well.
It's www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And interestingly, I've got 2 long postings that will kind of supplement what we're going to talk about for a few minutes here about the UAP report and how that's all gone down. There's a very long report there, and then there's a shorter piece to kind of clarify some of the points.
So let's talk about that. Some people are, there's a lot of, stuff going around right now on social media and stuff like that. I try to stay away from most of that. But there's a lot of people that were really angry that it didn't say they were aliens. I think that's what it boils down to. But people have to remember, this is not the full report. This is just a preliminary one.
Well, this is a 9-page high school report. There's not a whole lot in it.
Yeah.
I look at it as Nathan Twining 2.0. Nathan Twining was the commander of the Air Material Command back in 1947 when this whole thing exploded in the United States. He was sent a series of sighting reports to analyze. And of course, he didn't do it. He had his intelligence officer do it. But he issued a letter in September of 1947 that said the phenomenon, being the flying saucers, is something real. It's not illusionary or visionary or fictitious. He's saying it's real and needs to be investigated. And from that point, they established Project Sign, which morphed into Project Grudge, which became Project Blue Book. So they began a 22-year investigation into these things, but it started with this letter from Twining providing some information and analyses of what this information he'd received was, and suggested that there, the same things that Twining did back 75 years ago. We've got this report, the reports that we have, or the incidents we have, they haven't been well investigated. There's a lot of data missing. We think it's something real. It may boil down to a variety of explanations, including plastic bags floating in the atmosphere, balloons, drones. Many of the things that they said back in 1947 that could explain the UFOs. There was a suggestion that although they had no real evidence of it, there might be an extraterrestrial component. They kind of threw that bone out to the UFO community. But basically, I look at this as the same thing that we were doing back 75 years ago. Before any of us were born, they were looking at this thing, and now we've got a new investigation based on limited information that they didn't gather it very well. They looked at nothing historical. I cannot believe that the one thing they didn't do, anybody who's been to graduate school and has to do any kind of a dissertation or a master's thesis knows one of the first things you do is a literature search to find out what's gone on before so you don't duplicate the effort. And they didn't bother with any of that. They have access to the entire Project Blue Book files, which are online. They have access to the Robertson panel report done in 1953, sponsored by the CIA. They had access to the Condon Committee report, which was the one that ended Project Blue Book in 1969. They didn't look at any of that. They didn't contact any of the UFO organizations. They didn't contact any of the UFO researchers who might have been able to provide them with some ways of investigating this. It would have saved them a lot of time and effort. Instead, they just went out, well, we talked to the pilots. We didn't get a lot of good information. We have 144 reports, which may not be separate incidents. We know that Twining had 16 reports that he looked like. I think it eventually became 18, but in that there were 35 reports, meaning 35 witness statements were taken. So we don't know anything about how many incidents were actually investigated by these guys, how many reports they took. I don't know why they couldn't do a good job. They said the Air Force came on late and they were kind of scatterbrained in the way they were operating. So, well, maybe they should have looked back into Project Blue Book and pulled up some of that stuff to give them some assistance in it. I just think it's a very haphazard report thrown together to meet a requirement that they produce a report within 180 days of the passage of one of the relief bills for COVID-19, which I also find incredibly ridiculous. We've attached that as a rider to a bill providing stimulus for the American people, and instead we're worrying about UFOs in that respect. I think that the whole thing deserves more time, more effort, and we just didn't get it.
Well, do you think that's going to be it, or do you think we're going to hear from? Well, one of the things I do want to point out that I didn't hear you mention, or maybe you did, but they're saying that they want to use contemporary reports because of the data collection is more, modern. I'm paraphrasing, but it sounds to me like they don't want to go into the historical reports because the data is not as updated or solid according to what they're looking for.
Anybody who has done any research projects knows one of the first things you do is take a look at the history.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend a lot of time on it. All you have to do is take a look at the history and see what's gone before you so you don't duplicate the effort. What they've done is exactly the same thing that Twining did 75 years ago. They could have saved themselves a lot of effort. Just photocopy that, cut and paste it, and throw it out. I mean, we'd have the same results. I'm looking for this to eventually evolve into Condon 2.0, which is, well, the scientific community looked at this and they've decided that there's nothing to it, so we don't have to worry about it anymore, which is what Condon did 50 years ago. The interesting thing is this report has sort of negated Condon by saying, well, there's something to be looked at. There's national security issues. Condon said there weren't. There's things to be learned by studying this. Condon said there wasn't. the Air Force has not been doing a very good job. Condon said they did a really great job. I mean, the three conclusions that Condon reached, by the way, prior to even beginning the investigation, the conclusions were written out. And again, that's documented on my blog as well. Just type in Hippler letter. It's HIPPLER. And you'll see a letter from an Air Force officer to the Condon Committee, I think Dr. Robert Lowe, saying, here's what we'd like you to find. And then Lowe responds, yeah, we can do that. Haven't investigated a case, haven't done a thing, but here are your conclusions. And yeah, we can do that. And I think we're eventually going to run into that sort of thing, that we're going to end up with Condon 2.0. And it's an appeal to authority. Well, the authorities looked at this and there's nothing to it. But a lot of us have spent a great deal of time, many years researching this carefully. There's all kinds of research. When you talk about the collection of data, how many landing trace cases do we need to look at? Ted Phillips has, 4,500. And maybe the collection of some of that stuff wasn't as good as it could be, but there's some in there that's going to be very, very good. Look at the photographic cases, the radar cases, the cases with multiple chains of evidence. They're just ignoring all of that because they have some bias against the history of the UFO phenomenon, and it wasn't collected properly. You're saying that the Air Force investigation for 22 years, they didn't do a very good job and they didn't collect the data well during that time. Is that what you're saying? And now you're going to do a better job? You haven't even looked at it.
Yeah. Oh, you sound pretty frustrated.
Well, a lot of my friends, John Greenwald, I think, for example, said he was greatly disappointed in the report. And I'm thinking, I wasn't disappointed. It's exactly what I expected. I didn't expect there to be anything.
You know what? I got to tell you, I expected less. I expected it was going to be even, more deflated than. So I was actually impressed with a couple of things. And one of them being the things you just mentioned, the thing you just mentioned about, that there really is something to it, or that, those 143 of the 144, they're saying they don't have an explanation for. I don't know if they're going to do any more research into those particular cases, whatever they are or not.
Well, the thing is, if you go back and look at the Twining letter, and on my blog, I've got a list of the cases that were sent to him and the evidence, the analysis of the cases. And you can take a look at those, and some of those probably can be explained in today's environment. But at that time, they were unable to explain them. I think of the Charles Whitted sighting, which is not part of the Twining thing, but it took place in 1948, where these two airline pilots saw a cigar-shaped craft with square windows shooting by their airliner at 5,000 feet. In today's environment, I sincerely believe that what they saw was a bolide, a very bright meteor, as it was breaking up through a cloud layer. And if you look at some of the videos on YouTube of meteor, there's one called Meteor Compilation. It was like 3 minutes and 19 seconds, and somebody put together a whole bunch of videos of meteors breaking apart. And you can see how people who got a glimpse of this thing would think that you've got a lighted cabin and square windows on a cigar-shaped craft. And you can see that. So we have an explanation for that case, which was very mysterious back in 1948. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to see that kind of thing here. Well, this was very mysterious, but we found a glitch in our technology here that kind of put this image in front of the guys, or didn't resolve it quite well. There was another, and I discussed it on the blog as well, when they released one of the videos, and somebody had put on YouTube, he connected night vision goggles to his cell phone camera. And you get the same kind of image that the Navy released of this pyramid-shaped or triangular-shaped object. Yeah. And so you're looking at a technological glitch that created this sort of thing.
Yeah, right. Do you think, though, that it's just another case, if you would have to guess on this, do you think it's just another case of they're not going to be able to explain what it is yet? So let's put them in limbo again. That type of thing.
I think what they're going to do is try to kill off interest in it, as they did in 1969 with the Condon Committee. One of the points there was, tell people what's going on and remove the mystery from the phenomenon. And we have these authorities saying, well, there's nothing to this. We investigated this. We couldn't find that. Condon couldn't explain 30% of the sightings, but the scientific community just ignores that. They say, well, we had a scientific investigation and they didn't find anything. Take a look at it carefully, people. There's a lot of interesting information in there. Same way with the Project Blue Book files. There's a lot of information in there, if you take the time to go through it, that might help you understand the phenomenon. I'm sure they're right when they say, well, there's various solutions. We're not going to have a single solution for all the sightings. We're going to have a variety of solutions. And I believe that. That's
Yeah.
what we saw with Blue Book. Sometimes it was meteors, sometimes it was meteorological, sometimes it was strange cloud formations, sometimes it was hoaxes, sometimes it was aircraft seen under unusual circumstances. Yeah, we're going to have some of that sort of thing. But there's always going to be that residue of things that they're not going to be able to explain.
Right.
And they're going to just kind of ignore that and say, well, if we had better information, we could have explained that. Well, why don't you have that better information? You're investigating it. You have the wherewithal of the United States government behind you. Certainly you can get the people to cooperate with their UFO sightings.
Right. So just one more question. What do you think would be a tipping point? I mean, you would think that the Pentagon investigating UFOs would be kind of a tipping point where, well, let's really look into this seriously. And they are at least doing, a show of trying to do that. Window dressing maybe, but still.
Well, I looked at this thing when I did UFOs in the Deep State, which just was published not that long ago. Why presidents who wanted to get UFO information out to the public, why they couldn't do it. Jimmy Carter, for example.
Yeah.
And what I learned there was there are ways of dodging presidential edicts. The president says, I want to know everything you know about UFOs. And the answer is, we'll gather that information for you and get back to you with a report on that. And somehow it never gets done. And now we have this document, this 9 pages. They lived up to the obligation of creating a report in 180 days. And the best they could do was 9 pages. There was just absolutely nothing there but their conclusion, sort of an executive summary. Let's see the data that you looked at and that sort of thing. I think it's going to be that kind of a dodge, and we're going to end up with this appeal to authority saying, well, we looked at it, we couldn't find anything, so there you go.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see any typos.
Well, I think the secretarial talent at the level they would be operating at would be among the best.
Yeah.
And besides that, we have word check, which, by the way, has been screwing me up lately. Misspelling, taking the wrong words and plugging them into my documents there. So.
Yeah. Oh, well. Hey, Kevin, thanks. As always, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and hope to have you on for a full show coming up another few months. I'll reach out to you, but thanks so much for everything. Hey, and thanks for all you do, really.
Oh, and thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And tell everybody to go out and buy UFOs in the Deep State so I can get to number 1.
Hey, all right. I'll try to remember to put that in the show notes as well. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So don't forget to tune in next week at 5 o'clock. I'm going to be on location in the Berkshires. It's going to be a heck of a show. And thanks so much for watching and listening tonight. Sorry for the technical glitch. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky.